Spiritual Awakening Do's and Don'ts by Ayan Farvahar. Spiritual awakening is a consciousness expanding process and helps you realize the spiritual aspects of your being, aspects that are not meant to be understood by your rational mind. So when you're experiencing spiritual awakening, don't try to understand it, and instead always look for what your spiritual experiences mean to you and how they can help you expand your self-awareness and live a deeper and more meaningful life. Hi, this is Ayan Farvahar. I'm glad you're here. This channel is about self-realization and honoring a life purpose and meaning. If you're interested in these topics, please subscribe to stay connected. Your support is the foundation of this channel and encourages me to create more content in the future. Today, we want to focus on spiritual awakening, more specifically, its do's and don'ts. Spiritual awakening is a consciousness expanding process and opens up your mind to deeper dimensions of reality. What you consider reality is not absolute because reality has many layers, and you have the choice to whether or not access these layers. In fact, many shamanic and esoteric wisdom traditions consider the spiritual reality as an all-encompassing reality and view the physical world as a material emanation of that reality. It may be helpful to think of your psyche as a powerful multiband receiver. This receiver can tune in to different frequencies of reality. When you keep it locked in to this physical reality, your consciousness only receives information from that reality and knows nothing about deeper spiritual realities. Spiritual awakening is a process through which your psyche begins to change the channel of this receiver and tune in to these spiritual realities, and through that expands your awareness of them. Your psyche is capable of doing that because we humans are spiritual beings experiencing an earthly existence, not earthly beings experiencing spirituality. Because spiritual awakening is a mind-manifesting process, its experience can involve both psychological and emotional transformations. We need to realize that our rational mind is not designed to understand spiritual experiences and may at times feel overwhelmed by them. This is expected because as a part of our spiritual awakening, our mind has to cross the boundaries of the unknowns and must learn to come to terms with our non-ordinary experiences. Because of the non-ordinary nature of spiritual experiences, some preparation and understanding of what to expect can be useful to avoid unnecessary psychological or emotional challenges one may face in the process. This preparation has nothing to do with the level of your intellect or your personal beliefs, but instead to your openness and courage to witness and experience spiritual realities without demanding your rational mind to understand them, at least at the beginning. If you're currently in a spiritual awakening process, you may find the information shared here useful in navigating it. The content presented here are divided in two parts. First part is focused on spiritual awakening do's, or things you may want to consider doing in the process. Second part is focused on spiritual awakening don'ts, or things you may want to watch for and avoid during your awakening journey. Let's go over these. Spiritual awakening do's. Things to do during your spiritual awakening. As mentioned, we can think of spiritual awakening process as a journey into the unknown, a journey that may not at first have a clear destination or map. Like any other journey, some prior knowledge and preparation can make the journey less overwhelming and rather joyous, adventurous, and life-affirming. Spiritual awakening can be a gift because it can help you recognize the spiritual nature of your being. It is also a gift because it can also help you realize that you are a part of a much bigger divine unity. You can call it God or the superconscious creator behind the cosmos and all that exists. With this intro, let's go over a few important do's during a spiritual awakening journey. These are by no means complete, but they gave you some ideas of what to watch for. Always know what you're looking for. Spiritual reality is a field of wisdom, like a library that is filled with all knowledge that exists, knowledge that is not accessible in the physical world. When you go to a library, you need to know what knowledge you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for, you will likely end up with a random book that may not be as useful to you. Similarly, when you have spiritual, psychic, or shamanic experiences, you need to know what you're looking for. Otherwise, your psyche will be exposed to random spiritual experiences or energies that may not be as useful or as life-affirming to you as you hope. So it is important to have an intention and know, at least to a certain degree, what you're looking for when doing meditations, shamanic journeys, or using psychedelics. Remember that simply being curious is not the best of intentions. Make sure you are psychologically and emotionally grounded. Spiritual experiences can be deep and overwhelming, as your psyche experiences both dark and light entities or energies. So it is important to be psychologically and emotionally grounded. Being grounded means having a state of mind that is calm and open, being able to trust yourself unconditionally, have no fear or negative emotions, and instead being anxiously excited about expanding your self-awareness and understanding your spiritual nature. You need to also update and reassure your rational mind and let it know that it does not have to understand or identify with whatever you witness during your spiritual experience. This helps your mind to take a witnessing role, as opposed to try to identify or react to whatever you experience. Establish a sacred center and stay connected to it. Virtually all spiritual and wisdom traditions have an altar or a symbolic sacred center. This center is used during meditative and praying ceremonies. Similarly, you need to create an altar somewhere in your room. This altar should have what you hold sacred or value the most in your personal and spiritual beliefs. This altar also represents your center, a center that is grounding, calming, and representative of you. In shamanic and ancient wisdom traditions, this altar represents your spiritual heart, your axis mundi, or the center of your being. It is from this center that you adventure into the spiritual world, and it is to this center that you will return. To use a metaphor here, think of your sacred altar as your base camp in wilderness. You start your journeys into wilderness from this base and always return to it at the end. Focus on your altar before you start your meditative or spiritual journeys to ground yourself, so you don't drift too far from it during your journey. And even if you did, you know how to return to it. Having a sacred altar is an essential part of the spiritual awakening process. Know when to stop or take a break. Spiritual awakening has ups and downs because you're pushing the boundaries of your consciousness. There would be times your experiences become too exotic and overwhelming to your rational mind. So it is important to take a break from your meditation or spiritual practices from time to time and connect to your body to give your rational mind time to settle down. Taking a break also gives you time to contemplate on your spiritual experiences and ask what they could mean to you. This contemplation is also known as integration, where we look for the meaning behind our spiritual experiences and how they can enrich our life and its direction. Journaling, spending time in nature, or joining a community of like-minded individuals can also be helpful during the integration process. Once you feel grounded and ready again, you can reconnect and further deepen your spiritual awakening journey. Take steps to purify your heart and mind. The spiritual world is like a mirror, reflecting and magnifying what's inside you. The more purified human qualities you possess, the more transcending and nourishing your spiritual connections become. The opposite is also true. The more negative, intense, or angry emotions you hold inside your heart and mind, the darker and more intense energies you may come across in your spiritual, shamanic, or psychic encounters. Remember that spiritual levels of consciousness are gated, and to pass these gates, you need to learn to purify your heart and mind from all negative, intense, and life-denying thoughts or feelings. Spiritual awakening don'ts. Things to watch for during your spiritual awakening. In this section, we cover a few things to watch for and avoid during your spiritual awakening journey. These are not complete, but give you some ideas what to watch for. Be aware of spiritual bypassing. Under certain conditions, spiritual practices can become a remedy or escape from dealing with psychological or emotional issues. This is also known as spiritual bypassing, where your practice of spirituality is no longer driven by your open-hearted curiosity, but instead becomes a mean to disconnect you from dealing with difficult aspects of your life. You can check whether or not you are affected by spiritual bypassing. For example, if you meditate on a regular basis, ask yourself how you would feel if you stopped meditating. Would you be able to carry on and still feel emotionally centered and grounded? Or do you feel things can become harder to deal with during your day? If you notice your meditative and spiritual practices have become a way to feel better emotionally, maybe it's time to stop your practice and instead do some psychological inner work to get to the bottom of what's preventing you from feeling calm and emotionally well, even without spiritual practices. Remember that your spiritual connection is meant to enrich your life. It is not meant to become an existential part of your life. Be aware of spiritual inflation. Spiritual inflation is the disease of the spiritual awakening process. It happens when your ego-conscious mind over-identifies with the spiritual or psychic power you may notice in you. As any power, the spiritual power can be intoxicating and awaken a sense of superiority in you, and through that creating a separation between you and others. This is observed in practice, as there are accounts of people over-identifying with their spiritual insights, even believing to be angels, demons, prophets, shamans, or even God. These are signs of over-identification with the spiritual power or insight one may experience during spiritual awakening. Spiritual power is a gift you may find in you, but you should not over-identify or be inflated by it. even if you have the best intentions in mind. Instead, see your spiritual power as a gift that is trusted upon you to serve the humanity. Or stating it differently, you're not it, but only a vehicle or conduit to bring it to the world, if it's aligned with your purpose. Spiritual awakening journey will test you by fear, by power, and by identities. You need to be prepared for these tests and learn not to be intimidated by fear and not to over-identify or become inflated by power. Spiritual power without love corrupts the mind. Spiritual power with love is otherwise life-affirming and in service of humanity and the divine. Avoid experiential spiritual practices. Spiritual awakening has a life-affirming purpose. Avoid using it solely based on curiosity, thrill-seeking, or as a means to magic. Avoid practices that are exotic and experiential in nature and are therefore unpredictable or unmanageable. Examples are spiritual imagination and creation of non-physical thought forms like tulpas or egregores. These thought forms can become autonomous and create psychic and psychological issues. It is best to avoid experiential practices and instead focus your spiritual curiosity on more positive and life-affirming practices. Avoid identifying or reacting to dark energies. Some spiritual experiences, especially mediumistic, shamanic, psychic, or psychedelic experiences, can involve encounters with spiritual energies that appear or feel negative and dark in nature. Identifying or overreacting to these experiences can cause psychological issues, as our rational mind is incapable to come to terms with these energies. Instead of identifying, rejecting, or overreacting to these less positive spiritual emanations, try to remain an observer and look for any insight or meaning that these negative emanations bring to your attention, both about yourself and the world. Don't expect to understand your experiences. By nature, your mind wants to understand everything you experience. But when it comes to spiritual experiences and energies, trying to understand them is neither practical nor useful. Avoid demanding your mind to understand everything and instead realize that you're crossing the boundaries of your consciousness, and it is not fair to expect your mind to understand everything that you experience. Instead, ask yourself what the experience means to you and how it can deepen your understanding of yourself and the spiritual realities beyond this world. In closing, I hope you have found the ideas presented here useful. Remember that spiritual awakening is meant to be a consciousness expanding and life nourishing process. So always listen to your heart, stay grounded, and use discretion when exploring the spiritual dimensions of reality, and you yourself as an inseparable part of that reality. If you have found this presentation useful, please like and share it with your like-minded friends. Please subscribe to my channel and share your thoughts and comments. For more information about myself and my life mentorship practice, please find my bio link in the description below. Blessings.